You were not born to be someone's shadow. From the moment you're born, you're placed into a world built by others. They name you, they dress you. They define what is good and what is bad, what success looks like, how you're supposed to speak, how you're supposed to think. And without realizing it, you begin to shrink, not physically, but spiritually. Your soul begins to mold itself to fit a cage, a form, a role. You wear masks, not to deceive others, but to survive among them. The tragedy, you start to believe the mask is your face. Nietzsche saw this as a form of slow spiritual decay. Imitation, he believed, was the death of becoming. When you follow another too closely, you don't just abandon originality, you abandon the possibility of becoming anything greater than them. You trade the adventure of your own chaos for the safety of someone else's order. But greatness has never come from obedience. It never comes from those who blend in, who seek permission, who crave applause. Greatness is carved by those who dared to be misunderstood, who walked away from the herd, not out of pride, but because something inside them refused to be silent. To stop imitating is to risk rejection. To think for yourself is to walk alone. But the loneliest path is often the most honest one because it belongs to you. And that is where you begin to rule. Your greatest enemy wears your face and speaks in your voice. You can spend your entire life fighting the world, pointing fingers, blaming systems, blaming your parents, your bosses, the government, the circumstances that broke you. But Nietzsche challenged us to face a far more terrifying truth. The real war is within. The loudest chains are not the ones that rattle in the world, but the silent ones wrapped around your own mind. There is a tyrant living inside you, and he knows all your secrets. He whispers at night, "You're not enough." He shouts when you try something bold, "You'll fail." He kneels in fear of others' judgment and pulls you down with him. Most people never confront this inner tyrant. They live their entire lives chained by invisible fears, seeking safety instead of strength. But Nietzsche's call was brutal and honest. If you cannot rule over yourself, you are not free. You are merely a puppet with the illusion of choice. To become your own ruler is not about dominance over others, it's about discipline, about taming your inner chaos without destroying your fire. It's about walking into the darkest rooms of your mind and refusing to flinch. It is not glory. It is pain, silence, and the slow forging of will. But when you win this inner war, something changes forever. You no longer need to prove anything. You no longer beg for permission. You become undeniable because you are whole. The more obedient you become, the more you forget how to think. Obedience is seductive. It offers you something irresistible, the freedom to not think. When you obey, you can blame others for your failures. When you follow orders, you are no longer responsible. If something goes wrong, you simply shrug and say, "I was just doing what I was told." Nietzsche saw this as the slow poison of the human spirit. Obedience breeds comfort, and comfort breeds weakness. You stop questioning, you stop doubting, you start applauding the very cage you're trapped in. In time, you don't even realize it's a cage anymore because everyone around you's trapped too. You praise your boss, you mimic your idols. You become a photocopy of someone else's convictions. And yet, deep inside, there's a scream muffled but constant that says, "This isn't who I am." But it terrifies you because to disobey is to be alone. To say no is to risk rejection. To question is to be hated. That's the real reason obedience thrives, because the cost of truth is high, and most aren't willing to pay it. But those who are, they walk a different path, one that is brutal, lonely, but deeply alive. Nietzsche did not advocate rebellion for its own sake. He advocated for sovereignty, for the reclaiming of your mind, your body, your choices. To stand alone, not because you're against the world, but because you're finally for yourself. When you stop following the crowd, you enter the desert not of sand, but of the self. There comes a point in your life not marked by age, but by awakening, when you look around and see that everything you were taught is built on sand, that the dreams you were sold were not your own, that the people you trusted were merely repeating scripts they inherited, and in that moment, something cracks. You begin to ask, what if everything I've built was never truly mine? Nietzsche called this moment a spiritual death, the death of the herd instinct. The moment you stop seeking validation from others and begin a pilgrimage into the unknown. The desert, he said, is where the soul must go when it begins to thirst for truth. But the desert is not kind. It is vast, empty, silent. It does not clap for you. It offers no maps, no paths, no applause. You will wander, you will doubt, you will feel insane. But it is here in the burning solitude that the self begins to form, no longer shaped by others, no longer defined by belonging, but by becoming. The desert breaks the weak, but those who endure emerge as something terrifyingly rare, an individual who knows who they are, not because they were told, but because they suffered to find out. Everyone wants to be someone until they realize the price of becoming. In a world addicted to identity, everyone wants to find themselves, but Nietzsche warned you do not find yourself. You create yourself, and creation always demands destruction. You must destroy the lies you were told. You must betray the version of you that everyone loved. You must burn the comfort that kept you small. That's why most people never truly become. Because they want transformation without pain. They want growth without sacrifice. They want applause from a crowd while daring to stand alone. But becoming isn't beautiful. It's brutal. It's messy. It's the tearing away of every borrowed belief. It's sitting in silence while the world misunderstands you. It's waking up with no one to guide you and walking anyway. Nietzsche didn't promise salvation. He offered sovereignty, a life not ruled by pleasure or conformity, but by inner command. And that kind of life, the life of the higher man, is earned. You want to rule yourself? Good. Now prove it. Kill the coward in you. Bury the follower. And rise as someone new. The journey to rule yourself will look like madness to everyone else. When you decide to stop following, when you choose to break the rhythm of the herd, people will stare. They will whisper. They will say you've lost your mind. They won't understand why you walked away from safety, why you stopped attending their rituals, why you began questioning what they blindly accepted. And they're right. You have gone mad, but not in the way they think. You've gone mad in the way a caterpillar goes mad inside its cocoon, dissolving itself completely to become something it cannot yet see. Self-mastery, Nietzsche said, requires a total undoing. You must let the old you rot. You must let false dreams collapse. You must let fear scream and walk anyway. This kind of madness is sacred because it is not chaos for its own sake. It is chaos with a purpose. It is the fire that purifies. It is the storm before the storm. And while the world mocks you, fears you, misunderstands you, you will keep going, not because it's easy, but because you've heard something they haven't, your own voice. And once you truly hear it, there is no going back. When you start seeing clearly, you will start walking alone. There is a strange paradox in the path of awakening. The clearer your vision becomes, the lonelier your road gets. Nietzsche knew this well. He walked away from fame, institutions, relationships, not because he hated others, but because he had seen through the veil. He understood that the more you develop your own mind, the less you can tolerate illusions, and the more you outgrow the people still clinging to them. Clarity strips away comfort. You no longer laugh at the jokes of the crowd. You no longer kneel before the idols of society. You no longer fear the silence that others drown with noise. And so you find yourself alone, not because you reject the world, but because you refuse to be ruled by it. It is a bitter medicine. The meals taste colder, the rooms feel emptier, the days stretch longer. But within that solitude lies your inheritance, vision, self-reliance, and the sacred fire of autonomy. You will become a temple, a fortress, a sovereign. And though the nights may be long, your soul will stop asking for company because it has finally become complete. Every time you silence your instincts to please others, you betray the ruler within. We are trained from birth to obey. Obey parents, obey teachers, obey trends, obey gods we never chose, rules we never questioned, identities we never created. By the time we are grown, we are hollow stuffed with borrowed voices and recycled dreams. But beneath that conditioning, something ancient remains, a voice that does not beg or flatter. It does not fear punishment or crave reward. It simply knows. It knows when something is wrong, even when the world calls it right. It knows when to walk away, even when it costs everything. It knows who you are before the world told you who to be. Nietzsche believed this voice was the embryo of the Bermensch, a higher self, not a tyrant, not a god, but a human who obeys no one but their own will. This isn't arrogance, it's alignment. It's when the mind, the heart, and the instinct form one silent, indestructible command. You were not born to be a mirror, you were born to be a flame, and no fire ever asked for permission to burn. To rule yourself, you must first declare war on your weakness. Most people are at peace not because they've conquered themselves, but because they've surrendered. They've made peace with mediocrity, with distraction, with fear. They don't feel conflict because they have silenced the part of them that once demanded greatness. But Nietzsche taught that the path to sovereignty is warfare, not against others, but within. To be ruled by the self means to be governed by discipline forged through fire, tempered by trials. It means silencing the voice that says, "I'll do it tomorrow." It means rising when your body begs for comfort. It means choosing meaning over pleasure again and again and again. This war is not glorious. It is not seen. There are no medals, no applause, only a quiet battlefield within your soul. Every choice you make is a sword strike. Every weakness you overcome is territory reclaimed. In time, the war begins to shift. The chaos becomes order. The cravings become commands. And your mind becomes a kingdom not ruled by emotion, but by will. You will not always win. But if you keep fighting, one day you will look in the mirror and see not a man, not a woman, but a sovereign, and that is the rarest of victories. You cannot build yourself until you shatter the image of who you think you are. There is a mirror inside you, one that reflects not who you truly are, but who the world trained you to be. Every compliment, every insult, every expectation etched into its surface like a sacred script. You look into that mirror and see a person who smiles on command, who shrinks when challenged, who performs instead of lives. You believe that is you, and so you protect it. But Nietzsche whispers something terrifying. You are not that reflection. You are not what others needed you to be. You are not the sum of your titles. You are not your guilt, not your name, not your history. You are what remains when all that is burned away. And that's why most people never change, because the price of growth is identity death. To rule yourself, you must kill the image you once worshipped. You must let it die in silence with no applause and no resurrection. This is the beginning of sovereignty, not becoming someone new, but finally removing what was never you to begin with. Most people don't want freedom. They want permission to stay weak. People shout about freedom, but few understand what it demands. They think it means doing what they want, when they want, without consequence. But real freedom, Nietzsche warned, is the heaviest burden a human can carry, because once you stop following others, there's no one left to blame. Every decision is yours, every failure yours, every regret, every triumph, every silence yours. Freedom is not comfort. It's not a vacation. It's not a daydream. It is weight. It is ownership. It is choosing discipline when no one is watching. It is saying no when everyone expects you to say yes. It is building a life from raw will with no blueprint and no safety net. That's why most people quietly choose chains, because chains relieve you of choice. And choice is where fear lives. But the sovereign man embraces this weight. He does not ask to be saved. He does not seek to be led. He bears his life like a crown of fire, painful, glorious, and absolutely his. They can take your status, your comfort, even your body, but never your inner command. Nietzsche knew that the most powerful throne is not made of gold. It is built in the mind. A person who governs their own thoughts is immune to control, and that is what the world fears most. Because when you cannot be seduced by flattery, you cannot be manipulated. When you cannot be broken by failure, you cannot be owned. When you can sit in pain, boredom, silence, and remain unmoved, you become untouchable. This kind of mind does not come from comfort. It is sculpted through fire, through countless hours of solitude. Through reading what hurts, thinking what others fear, questioning what others worship, you begin to realize true power is not in how loud you speak, but in how still you can remain while the world trembles. They will try to provoke you. They will tempt you, shame you, praise you, attack you, and still, your mind will be a fortress, because you are no longer ruled. You are no longer owned. You are no longer reacting. You are commanding. You cannot rule yourself, seeking the approval of the herd. There is no crowd more dangerous than the one that applauds you, because applause is the leash hidden in the music. Nietzsche warned of the herd mentality, the subtle, invisible current that pulls people into sameness, into safety, into mediocrity. The herd tells you, don't stand out, don't think too deeply, don't speak too loudly. It punishes authenticity with silence. It punishes truth with exile. It punishes strength with suspicion. But the individual who seeks sovereignty must sever this cord. You must disappoint the crowd. You must walk away from the dinner table. You must refuse their comfort, their rhythm, their identity. Because every time you seek their validation, you hand them your crown. The death of the herd is not a rebellion of violence. It is the quiet revolution of turning inward. It is choosing principle over popularity. It is choosing growth over inclusion. And yes, it will cost you. You will lose friends. You will be misunderstood. You will walk alone into the cold unknown. But in that cold, a fire will spark, a fire that belongs to no one but you. Your will is not a gift, it is a blade, and if you do not sharpen it, the world will dull it for you. The modern soul is soft, not by nature, but by neglect. We have more access to knowledge than any time in history, yet we are weaker in spirit. Why? Because willpower, the muscle of the soul, has been abandoned. Nietzsche saw the will not as some abstract force, but as the most sacred tool of human sovereignty, a blade forged in the fire of repetition, tempered through discomfort, sharpened through rejection, resistance, and resolve. But most do not train this blade. They wait for motivation, they wait for permission, they wait to feel ready, and in waiting, they rust. To rule yourself, you must begin before you're ready. You must move when no one is watching. You must choose the harder road, not because it's noble, but because it's yours. Every time you delay your discipline, your blade dulls, and a dull blade cannot cut through the chains of society. But if you wield it daily, if you fight yourself instead of the world, you will become something few have ever seen. A human who does not need rescuing. Because he has become his own warrior. When no one is watching, who decides who you must be? At the summit of inner mastery lies one final realization. You are the law, not in arrogance, not in cruelty, but in radical, uncheckable self-governance. Nietzsche believed the greatest human was not one who obeyed the law, but one who became it. The sovereign being does not wait for rules to tell him what is right. He does not conform to borrowed morals. He does not outsource his ethics, his vision, or his direction. He creates it from within. Every action becomes a decree. Every word becomes a standard. Every choice becomes a signature on his own soul. This is not freedom without structure. This is not chaos. It is order born of will, a system designed not for the masses, but for the elevation of one, yourself. When you rise at dawn, it is by your law. When you endure suffering, it is by your law. When you face temptation and say no, it is by your law. No applause. No judgment. Only the silent gravity of a life lived in truth. This is what it means to rule yourself, not just in mind, not just in action. But in destiny.